Some people think you need deep pockets to create a garden that feels like a sanctuary, but I found the opposite to be true. Beauty often comes from the smallest touches, the ones made with patience, love, and a bit of imagination. I still remember my grandmother's porch, nothing bought from fancy garden stores, just chipped clay pots, a mismatched chair, and flowers grown from seeds she'd saved in envelopes. Yet it was the most magical place I'd ever seen. This video isn't about buying perfection. It's about crafting it piece by piece with things you might pass by at the Dollar Tree or tucked away in your own shed. You and I are going to explore 25 simple, clever hacks that cost less than $10 each, yet can make your garden look like it belongs in a glossy magazine. I'll share ideas you can do without heavy lifting, and I'll sprinkle in some of my own stories and lessons learned along the way. So pour yourself a cup of tea, settle into your favorite chair, and let's take a slow walk through ideas that prove beauty isn't a matter of money, it's a matter of care. I've always believed that hanging plants are like earrings for the garden. They draw the eye upward, frame the space, and make everything feel a little more alive. The funny thing is, some of the prettiest hanging baskets I've ever seen weren't store-bought at all. Years ago, a neighbor of mine, well into her 70s, showed me her secret. She would buy plain wire baskets from the Dollar Tree, the kind you might use in a kitchen, and turn them into cascading planters worthy of a catalog. Here's how she did it and how you can too. Start with 2 wire baskets of the same size. Line the inside with a coconut coir liner or even an old burlap sack. Both are lightweight and easy to handle. Fill it with a mix of potting soil and a bit of slow-release fertilizer. Choose plants that will spill gracefully over the sides, like trailing petunias, sweet potato vine, or ivy. For a pop of height, you can plant something upright in the center, like geraniums or marigolds. If you want to get creative, spray paint the baskets beforehand in a color that matches your garden's personality. Perhaps a soft bronze for a vintage feel, or a cheerful pastel for spring. Attach 3 lengths of sturdy chain or rope to the rim, and bring them together at the top with a hook. These are light enough that you can hang them from a shepherd's hook, a porch beam, or even a tree branch without needing ladders or heavy tools. The beauty of this hack is not just in the money saved, but in the flexibility. You can swap out the plants each season, refresh the liners, or even use them for non-plant decor, think hanging lanterns or seasonal displays. And every time you see them swaying in the breeze, you'll know that elegance came not from a store's price tag, but from your own hands. It's a reminder I carry into many parts of life. The most beautiful things are often built, not bought. And just like these baskets, we too can hold and nurture life, even when we've been repurposed for a new season. There's something magical about a garden that glows softly at night, like it's holding a secret just for you. I first learned the charm of soft evening light from a friend who lived in a tiny lakeside cottage. She didn't have a grand landscape, but she strung little lights along the path to her front door, and every evening they turned her small yard into something out of a storybook. The trick, she told me with a wink, was that she'd made them herself for under $10. You can create that same warm glow with just 2 items from the Dollar Tree, a mason jar and a small solar light. Begin by removing the stake from the solar light so only the top with the panel remains. Fill the mason jar with decorative stones, colored glass pebbles, or even seashells if you want a coastal feel. Place the solar light top inside the jar panel facing up. When the sun sets, the stored energy will cast a gentle light through the jar, scattering patterns onto the ground or walls nearby. These lanterns can be placed anywhere, lining a walkway, hanging from tree branches with twine, or tucked into flower beds for a surprise sparkle. They're lightweight, easy to move, and require no cords or electricity. If your hands aren't as steady as they once were, don't worry. The assembly is simple and doesn't require glue or complicated tools. For a personal twist, you could slip a small photo-pressed flowers or a meaningful trinket inside the jar before sealing it. That way the light doesn't just brighten the garden, it tells a quiet story. Imagine sitting on your porch at dusk watching those jars flicker on one by one, each holding a little memory, each glowing like a lantern from your past. What I love most about this project is that it turns something as ordinary as a dollar store jar into a keeper of light. And maybe that's the lesson here, that our own light, much like these lanterns, can shine brightest when it's been gathered slowly, stored in something humble, and shared without fuss. If you've ever wished for more gardening space but felt limited by a small porch or patio, This little project might just become your favorite. I learned it from a retired teacher who grew herbs year-round on her apartment balcony. Her secret: she didn't buy expensive tiered plant stands. Instead, she fashioned one from simple cooling racks and a handful of zip ties from the Dollar Tree. Here's how it works. Start with 3 or 4 metal cooling racks, the kind used for baking cookies. Arrange 2 vertically side by side and secure them together with zip ties along the edges to form a sturdy back. Then attach the remaining racks horizontally at different heights to create shelves. The gaps between the wires allow for good air circulation, and because the shelves are shallow, you can reach your plants without leaning or bending much. To give it more stability, you can lean the stand against a wall or fence, or anchor it with a couple of small hooks. Fill lightweight pots with your favorite herbs, basil, parsley, mint, or thyme, and place them on the racks. Because the plants are elevated, you'll find it easier to water them without crouching, and they'll get better sunlight exposure. What's lovely about this stand is its adaptability. In summer, it can hold herbs and small flowering plants. In fall, you can swap in mini pumpkins or decorative gourds. In winter, hang ornaments or string lights through the rack for seasonal cheer. My friend even used one to display seed packets in spring so she could see what needed planting at a glance. Every time I look at a tiered rack made this way, I'm reminded of how creativity often blooms in constraint. The retired teacher who taught me this didn't see her lack of space as a setback. She saw it as an invitation to think differently. And maybe that's the bigger picture here. When we stop telling ourselves what we can't do, we open the door to discovering what we can do beautifully. Vertical gardening can feel like a magic trick. Suddenly, plants that once sprawled across the ground are climbing toward the sky, freeing up space and adding elegance at the same time. I first appreciated this when visiting an elderly couple's garden in the countryside. They had a narrow side yard, barely 6 feet wide, yet it looked lush and abundant. The secret was in the vertical lines: cucumbers curling up beans, climbing gracefully, morning glories weaving into a living curtain, and all of it supported by something simple: wire fencing from the Dollar Tree. To make your own trellis, start with a roll of lightweight wire fencing. You can bend it into an arch, a flat panel, or even a triangular prism depending on your space. Use garden stakes, zip ties, or twist ties to secure it in place. If bending the wire feels tricky, wear gardening gloves and work slowly, letting the fencing curve naturally rather than forcing it. Once it's anchored, plant climbers at its base. Peas pole, beans clematis, or sweet peas all work beautifully. As the plants grow, gently guide their tendrils toward the fence, and soon you'll have a vertical wall of greenery. Not only does this save precious garden space, but it also makes harvesting easier, since you can pick fruits and vegetables at waist height without bending. For an extra touch of charm, spray paint the wire fencing before installation. A soft green blends with the foliage, while a rustic bronze or black can make the plants pop against the background. You could even weave ribbons or twine through the fencing to create patterns before the plants fill in. What struck me most about the couple's garden wasn't just the abundance of food, it was the way the trellis framed their little path like a doorway into a secret garden. It reminded me that sometimes beauty comes not from adding more, but from shaping what's already there. The trellis wasn't expensive, yet it turned a forgotten side yard into a place of wonder. And maybe that's the lesson: we all have side yards in life, overlooked spaces, waiting for a bit of structure and care to flourish. There's a quiet joy in watching birds visit your garden, the flit of wings, the gentle splash of water, the way they seem to pause time just by being there. I remember my first homemade bird bath put together on a slow Sunday afternoon. It wasn't grand or costly. In fact, it came entirely from the Dollar Tree. But when the first sparrow landed, cocked its head, and took a sip, it felt like I'd built a little welcome sign for nature itself. Here's how you can create your own for under $10. Start with a sturdy planter base. Plastic works fine, and it's light enough to move without strain. Turn it upside down to serve as the pedestal. On top, place a wide plastic or ceramic saucer. If you want more stability, secure them together with a bead of waterproof adhesive, but it's optional if you prefer the flexibility to disassemble it later. Fill the saucer with fresh water and place the bath in a shaded spot where birds feel safe from predators. You can decorate the base with river stones, seashells, or even wrap it with jute rope for a rustic touch. If bending is difficult, set the bird bath at waist height so you can refill it easily. Change the water every couple of days to keep it clean and inviting. To make it extra charming, add a few flat stones and the saucer birds like to perch while they drink, and it helps smaller species feel secure. Over time, you may notice regular visitors, a cardinal at sunrise, a pair of finches in the afternoon, perhaps even a hummingbird stopping by for a quick rest. What I love most is how a simple bird bath changes the rhythm of your garden. It's no longer just about plants, it becomes a living, breathing space where creatures gather. And maybe that's a reminder for us too. Sometimes the greatest beauty comes when we create spaces not just for ourselves, but for others to feel at home. There's something about a winding garden path that makes you want to slow down and take your time. It draws the eye, invites the feet, and makes even the smallest yard feel like it has a story to tell. Years ago, I visited a neighbor who had what looked like an expensive stone walkway meandering through her flower beds. I was shocked when she told me the truth. It wasn't stone at all. It was painted rubber mats from the Dollar Tree. Here's how you can create your own without lifting a single heavy rock. Start with plain interlocking rubber mats or even welcome mats, the kind you can easily cut with scissors. Lay them out where you'd like your path to go, making sure the ground is as level as possible. If kneeling is difficult, you can prepare the area by sweeping it clean with a long-handled broom instead of bending. Next comes the transformation. Using outdoor spray paint in shades of gray, tan, or even soft slate blue, lightly mist the mats to create a stone-like texture. You can blend 2 or 3 colors for a more natural look. If you want to mimic the appearance of separate pavers, use painter's tape to mask off grout lines before painting, then peel it away once the paint dries. Once finished, place the mats back in position. They're soft underfoot, easy to hose off, and best of all, they stay in place without digging or cementing. This makes them perfect for renters or for anyone who might want to move the path seasonally. I love how this hack teaches us that beauty doesn't have to be heavy, not in weight and not in cost. It's a gentle reminder that our steps in the garden, much like in life, don't always have to be carved in stone. Sometimes the lighter path still takes us exactly where we want to go and lets us change direction when we need to. Some garden ideas are born out of necessity and others from pure whimsy. This one is a little bit of both. I once visited a community garden where each plot seemed to tell a story, not just through the plants, but through the creative markers identifying them. My favorite was a row of tomato plants labeled with old spoons, each one hammered flat and stamped with the plant's name. The gardener, a retired librarian, told me she found the spoons at a thrift shop for $1 a bundle, and they brought her more joy than any store-bought labels ever could. You can create your own version using kitchen utensils from the Dollar Tree. Forks, spoons, or even spatulas work beautifully. If you're feeling crafty, flatten metal utensils gently with a hammer, then write or engrave the plant name using a metal stamping kit or a permanent paint pen. For plastic utensils, a coat of outdoor spray paint in cheerful colors can make them pop against green foliage. Simply push the utensil handle into the soil near your plant. They're sturdy enough to withstand wind and rain, and because they're tall, they're easy to spot without bending down. You could even add a small charm or bead to the handle for extra personality. If you'd like to make it a family affair, invite grandchildren or friends to help decorate the utensils before placing them in the garden. This turns a simple labeling job into a memory-making activity, and you'll smile every time you see their handiwork nestled among the leaves. What I love about this project is that it transforms something ordinary, a forgotten utensil, into a tiny piece of art that also serves a purpose. It's a good reminder that in gardening, as in life, even the most humble tools can take on new beauty when given a different role. Sometimes all it takes is a shift in perspective to see the treasure in the everyday. There's a special kind of magic that happens when candlelight dances in a garden at dusk. It softens every edge, warms every color, and makes even an ordinary evening feel like an occasion. I learned this from a dear friend who hosted summer dinners in her backyard. She never had elaborate centerpieces or expensive lighting, just clusters of glowing glass vases along the patio and tucked between the plants. They cost her less than $10 in total, but they made her gatherings unforgettable. You can create the same warm, flickering atmosphere with glass vases from the Dollar Tree. Choose different shapes and sizes for variety: tall cylinders, short rounds, or even square ones. For a classic look, place a pillar candle or LED candle inside each vase. If you want something more decorative, pour a layer of sand, small pebbles, or glass beads at the bottom before adding the candle. This not only adds weight for stability, but also gives the light a lovely diffused glow. These holders are especially handy for outdoor use because the glass shields the flame from wind, keeping it steady. If lifting is a concern, keep the vases lightweight and place them where they can stay put all season. You can set them along steps on patio tables or even nestle them into flower beds for a hidden sparkle. For seasonal charm, change what's inside: autumn leaves in fall seashells and summer pine cones in winter. My friend even added sprigs of rosemary in spring so the gentle fragrance mingled with the evening air. What makes this idea so special isn't just the beauty of the light, but the way it changes the mood of a space. In our gardens and in our lives, small touches can create big feelings. Sometimes the glow comes not from grand gestures, but from a simple flame sheltered in glass, a little light steady and kind in a world that can feel hurried. Some garden ideas feel like they were made to spark conversation, and a hanging basket chandelier is one of them. I first saw one in the garden of an older couple who loved hosting evening teas under their maple tree. Above the table hung what looked like an elegant light fixture you'd expect indoors, but it was actually a simple metal hanging basket flipped upside down and transformed into a glowing centerpiece. It was whimsical, a little unexpected, and absolutely perfect. To make your own, start with a wire hanging basket from the Dollar Tree. Turn it upside down so the open side faces the ground. Remove the coconut liner if it has one. Then weave a string of battery-operated fairy lights or small LED bulbs through the wires, letting them drape and spiral in whatever pattern feels right. Secure the light's battery pack inside the basket using zip ties or floral wire, making sure it's easy to reach for changing batteries. Hang your chandelier from a tree branch pergola beam or porch ceiling hook. If you prefer a more formal look, spray paint the basket in a metallic tone like gold, bronze, or silver before adding lights. You could even embellish it with artificial vines, ribbons, or seasonal flowers for a softer touch. Because it's lightweight, you can adjust its height or move it without strain. And unlike hardwired fixtures, it doesn't require tools or electrical work, just creativity and a place to hang it. What I love most is how this project changes a space without overwhelming it. The couple who inspired me didn't have a large garden, but the chandelier made their outdoor table feel like the most inviting spot in the world. It's a reminder that light isn't just for seeing, it's for creating atmosphere, for making people feel they've stepped into somewhere special. And maybe that's a lesson beyond the garden, that the right touch, even a small one, can transform the way people feel in our company. A good garden edging does more than keep mulch in place. It frames your flower beds like a picture frame around a cherished photograph. I once visited a senior gardening club where one of the members, a retired art teacher, had the most cheerful garden borders I'd ever seen. From a distance, they looked like rows of painted ceramic tiles. But as I got closer, I realized they were simply Dollar Tree plastic plates, spray painted and partially buried. She laughed when I complimented her, saying, "Why buy expensive when you can have fun instead?" To try this yourself, start by choosing plastic plates in a color you like, or buy plain ones and spray paint them to suit your style. For a sophisticated look, use muted tones like slate gray or terracotta. For a playful garden, choose bright colors or even alternate them for a patterned effect. Once painted, mark the border of your garden bed and gently press each plate into the soil, so about 1/3 of it is below ground. This keeps them stable and aligned. If bending is difficult, use a long-handled weeder or narrow spade to create the slots before placing the plates. This edging works well for defining flower beds, vegetable patches, or even a pathway. Because the plates are lightweight, they're easy to rearrange if you change your garden layout. And if one gets damaged, replacing it costs almost nothing. The retired art teacher told me she changes hers every year, sometimes letting her grandchildren paint designs on the plates before they go into the ground. It became a family tradition, and now each season's border tells a story. I love this idea because it proves that even a humble plastic plate can become part of something beautiful when placed with care. Much like people, it's not the material alone that determines worth, it's the role it plays in the bigger picture. Some plants have a way of feeling like little treasures, and succulents are among them. They're small, sturdy, and endlessly charming, almost like living jewelry for the home or garden. Years ago, I visited a friend who had transformed her sunroom shelves into a tiny, succulent gallery. Each plant sat snugly inside a vintage teacup, their colors and shapes spilling over delicate porcelain patterns. She told me she'd found most of the teacups at thrift stores and the Dollar Tree, and the whole display had cost less than a single store-bought planter set. To create your own, start with a teacup that speaks to you, maybe one with gold trim for elegance, or a floral pattern that feels like spring. Place a small layer of pebbles at the bottom for drainage, then add cactus or succulent soil. Gently nestle your succulent into the cup, tucking in extra soil until it's secure. If your cup doesn't have a saucer, set it on a small matching plate or coaster to catch any excess water. Succulents thrive with minimal attention, needing only occasional watering, which makes them perfect for low-maintenance beauty. You can keep them indoors near a sunny window, place them on a porch table, or even line them along an outdoor shelf for a touch of whimsy. For an extra personal touch, try giving them as gifts. A teacup succulent makes a thoughtful present for neighbors, friends, or even as table centerpieces for a gathering. My friend told me she once hosted a tea party where every guest took home their teacup plant, a memory and a living keepsake in one. This hack is a quiet reminder that beauty doesn't always need to be grand in scale. Sometimes it's found in the smallest, most delicate details, like a plant in a teacup quietly thriving, asking little yet giving much. There's something about natural textures that makes a garden feel warm and inviting, and jute rope has that timeless, rustic charm. I first fell in love with the look when I visited a farmer's market in a small coastal town. A vendor was selling fresh herbs planted in what looked like expensive farmhouse-style planters. When I asked where she got them, she grinned and admitted they were just plain plastic buckets wrapped in rope from the Dollar Tree. It was proof that style often comes from creativity, not from a price tag. You can make your own rope-wrapped buckets in just a few easy steps. Start with a lightweight bucket. Even the brightly colored ones from the dollar store will work. Using a hot glue gun or a strong craft adhesive, attach the end of a roll of jute or sisal rope at the bottom edge of the bucket. Slowly wind the rope around, securing it with glue every few inches, working your way up to the rim. If you want a polished finish, tuck the final rope end neatly under the previous layer and glue it in place. The result is a sturdy, weather-friendly planter with a look that pairs beautifully with flowers, herbs, or even small shrubs. Because the bucket underneath is lightweight, it's easy to move around without strain, perfect if you like to rearrange your garden seasonally. For added personality, you can paint the rope with a whitewash effect for a coastal style, or add a band of colored rope near the top for contrast. I've even seen people weave in strips of fabric or ribbon to match their porch decor. The best part is that these planters aren't just for outdoors. You can use them indoors to hold houseplants, knitting supplies, or even rolled-up garden gloves. They blend into almost any style farmhouse, cottage, or beachy retreat. Whenever I see one of these rope planters, I'm reminded of that market vendor and her knack for turning the simplest thing into something beautiful. It's a reminder for all of us that a little creativity and a steady hand can transform the ordinary into something you'll be proud to display. When space is limited, the garden often asks us to think upwards instead of outwards. I first saw this clever idea at a senior living community where residents shared a single courtyard for their plants. One woman, who only had a few square feet of wall space, had created a lush vertical garden using nothing more than a fabric shoe organizer from the Dollar Tree. Her pockets overflowed with herbs, flowers, and even strawberries. And she told me it gave her the joy of tending a garden without the need to bend or kneel. To make your own, start with a sturdy fabric or canvas shoe organizer, the kind with multiple pockets in a single panel. Hang it against a wall fence or balcony railing using strong hooks or nails. Make sure it's at a height that's comfortable for you to reach so you can water and trim your plants without strain. Line each pocket with a small piece of plastic or landscape fabric to help hold soil while still allowing for drainage. Fill the pockets with a lightweight potting mix, then plant herbs like basil, thyme, or mint, or flowers such as pansies and petunias. You can even try small leafy greens like lettuce if the pockets are deep enough. Because the plants are elevated, they get good air circulation, which helps prevent pests and disease. Plus, watering is simple. Start from the top row and let the excess moisture drip down to the lower pockets. What I love about this project is how flexible it is. In spring, you can fill it with seedlings. In summer, switch to cascading blooms. In fall, plant ornamental kale or miniature pumpkins for a seasonal display. And in winter, it can hold dried flowers or birdseed pockets to attract wildlife. The woman who inspired me said her vertical garden gave her a reason to step outside every morning, coffee in hand, and tend to each little pocket of life. And I think that's the real magic here, not just the beauty it brings to a wall, but the rhythm and purpose it adds to our days. There's a kind of music in a garden that has nothing to do with birdsong or wind in the leaves. It's the gentle trickle of water, steady and soothing. I once visited a small backyard where that sound seemed to follow you no matter where you stood. The source. Not an expensive fountain, but an old watering can perched on a stone ledge, pouring a never-ending stream into a basin below. The homeowner told me she'd built it for under $10, most of it from Dollar Tree finds and a bit of ingenuity. To create your own, start with a metal or plastic watering can, ideally one with a long curved spout. Choose a large bowl basin or even a wide planter to serve as the lower reservoir. Position the watering can so its spout hovers over the basin. You can set it on bricks, a plant stand, or even hang it from a hook for a more whimsical look. Next, add a small submersible pump to the basin, threading the pump's tubing up through the watering can's spout. When the pump runs, the water will appear to pour endlessly from the can, then recycle back into the basin. You can disguise the pump with smooth river stones or glass pebbles for a natural finish. For those who prefer not to fuss with electricity, you can fill the can with water and let it act as a still ornament, perhaps with fresh flowers tucked inside. But if you do go with the pump, the result is a sound that invites you to linger, to sit for just a few more minutes and let your mind wander. The woman who shared her design told me it became her thinking spot. She'd sit beside it each morning, coffee in hand, and somehow the soft burble helped her sort through the day ahead. And maybe that's the gift of this project. It's not just a piece of decor, it's a companion for quiet moments. In a world that moves quickly, it gives you permission to slow down and listen. There's a certain kind of magic in miniature worlds, the kind that invites you to lean in close and notice the little things. I remember visiting a friend's patio one summer afternoon and spotting what looked like a tiny village tucked into the corner of her potting bench. It was a fairy garden complete with a pebble path, tiny chairs, and even a little pond made from a bottle cap. The whole thing was set inside an old baking pan she'd found at the Dollar Tree, and it was enchanting. To make your own, start with a shallow baking pan or roasting tray. Fill it with potting soil, leaving enough room at the top to add decorative elements without spilling. Choose small plants like moss thyme or baby's tears to create a lush, low-growing landscape. You can even add miniature succulents for texture and variety. Next comes the fun part, building your fairy world. Use pebbles or aquarium gravel for pathways, small twigs for fences, and dollhouse furniture for seating. You can make a pond by embedding a shallow dish or jar lid into the soil and filling it with water. If you're feeling crafty, hot glue a few pebbles together to make stepping stones or fashion a tiny arbor from popsicle sticks. This project is especially enjoyable to do with grandchildren or friends. Each person can add their own touch, a tiny mailbox, a painted rock, or a hidden door against the side of the pan. The end result becomes a little story you can place on a table, a garden shelf, or even indoors near a sunny window. What I love most about fairy gardens is that they remind us to play no matter our age. They ask us to see the beauty in the small and the imagined, and to find joy in creating something that serves no purpose except to make us smile. Sometimes, in both gardening and life, those are the projects that leave the deepest imprint on our hearts. Mirrors have a way of making spaces feel larger and more alive, and that magic isn't limited to indoors. I once stepped into a friend's small backyard and was struck by the sense of depth, as if her garden stretched far beyond its real borders. The secret. An old picture frame she'd turned into a weather-resistant garden mirror. It reflected the greenery so beautifully that it almost looked like a hidden doorway into another garden. To create your own, start with a large frame from the Dollar Tree or a thrift shop. Remove the glass and replace it with an acrylic mirror sheet, which is lighter and safer for outdoor use. If the frame's color doesn't match your style, give it a coat of outdoor paint, perhaps a distressed white for a cottage feel or deep bronze for a classic look. Once ready, choose a spot where the mirror will reflect something lovely, like a cluster of flowers, a trellis, or a seating area. Secure it to a fence shed wall or sturdy post. If lifting heavy items is challenging, opt for a smaller frame that's easier to handle but still creates the illusion of space. Over time, a garden mirror can also play with light, catching the shimmer of leaves in the breeze or the golden glow of sunset. My friend told me she loved standing by hers in the early morning, when dew made the whole scene sparkle twice over, once in reality and once in reflection. The beauty of this hack isn't just the extra dimension it adds to your garden. It's the reminder that perspective changes everything. Sometimes simply reframing what's in front of us literally and figuratively can reveal more beauty than we realized was there all along. A path can be more than a way to get from one place to another. It can be a work of art beneath your feet. I learned this from a neighbor who turned her garden walkway into a mosaic masterpiece using nothing more than plain stepping stones, smooth pebbles, and a patient hand. She told me it wasn't just about making something pretty, but about creating a trail of memories she could walk every day. To make your own pebble mosaic stepping stones, start with inexpensive concrete or resin stepping stones from the Dollar Tree or a hardware store. Collect small flat pebbles. You can find them in bags at dollar stores or gather them from nature if you have access. Arrange the pebbles in patterns on the surface of the stone before attaching them. Spirals, flowers, waves, or even simple borders can look beautiful. Secure the pebbles with a strong outdoor adhesive or thin layer of mortar, pressing them gently so they sit flush with the stone's surface. Let them dry completely before placing the stones in your garden. If bending to the ground is difficult, work on a tabletop covered with a drop cloth and then have a family member or friend help set them in place later. These mosaic stones can be used to form an entire walkway accent, a single corner of the garden, or create a stepping path between flower beds. Over time, weather will soften their colors and make them look like they've been part of your garden forever. My neighbor told me each stone in her path carried a story, one made from pebbles collected on a beach trip, another with stones from her childhood home. Every time she walked it, she was reminded of the people and places she loved. And I think that's the true gift of this project. It turns something functional into something deeply personal. A reminder that the steps we take are often more meaningful when we decorate them with pieces of our own history. Some of the most charming garden decor starts with items we usually toss in the recycling bin. I learned this from a neighbor who always had bursts of color lining her porch railing. At first glance, I thought she'd splurged on a set of coordinated metal planters. But when I looked closer, I realized they were just repurposed tin cans, each one painted sealed and blooming with life. She laughed when I complimented them and said, "Why throw away what can hold beauty? To make your own, save a few tin cans from soups, beans, or coffee. Remove the labels and smooth any sharp edges with sandpaper. Give each can a coat of spray paint in your chosen colors, bright pastels for spring, rich jewel tones for summer, or muted earth shades for autumn. For added personality, stencil patterns onto the cans or wrap them with burlap and ribbon. Drill or punch a few drainage holes in the bottom, then add potting soil and your plants. These holders are perfect for annual flowers like marigolds, pansies, or zinnias, but they can also house herbs for a kitchen garden you can snip from while cooking. Because they're lightweight, you can hang them from hooks, set them on steps, or group them in clusters for a fuller display. If you'd like to avoid drilling, use them as decorative sleeves for small nursery pots. That way you can easily swap plants in and out with the seasons. My neighbor changes hers every month, adding trailing ivy in cooler months and bursts of petunias when summer arrives. What I love most about this hack is its message: beauty doesn't require brand new things. Sometimes it comes from giving a second life to something humble. Just like a can once held food, it can hold flowers, and in both cases it's offering nourishment, one for the body and one for the spirit. Some pieces seem destined for the garden, even if that wasn't their original purpose. I remember walking past a yard sale where an old wooden ladder leaned against a fence, its paint faded and worn. Most people saw it as scrap, but the woman hosting the sale told me she had once used it as a plant stand. She said it had held everything from geraniums to herbs, and in its better days, it was the centerpiece of her back porch. That conversation stayed with me, and I soon made my own version, all for less than $10. To create one, start with an old stepladder or find a small one at the Dollar Tree or thrift shop. If the ladder feels rough, sand it lightly to avoid splinters. You can leave the wood weathered for a rustic look or paint it to match your garden's color scheme. Place the ladder in a spot where it will be stable against a wall on a patio or nestled among flower beds. Use the steps and top platform as display tiers for potted plants. Arrange taller plants on the bottom steps and smaller trailing ones toward the top for a layered effect. For added charm, mix in decorative elements, a small lantern, a birdhouse, or a watering can. If bending is uncomfortable, keep your most used plants at waist height where you can water and tend to them easily. You can also change the display with the season's herbs and flowers in spring mini pumpkins and mums in fall twinkling lights and evergreen sprigs in winter. What I love most about this idea is that it celebrates the history of an object. A ladder's job is to help us reach higher, and in this new role, it still does, only now it lifts our plants and our spirits. It's a gentle reminder that just because something's days of hard work are over doesn't mean its days of bringing joy have to be. Some garden decorations instantly spark curiosity, and a clay pot lighthouse is one of them. I first saw one while visiting a coastal town's garden tour. Tucked among a bed of lavender and daisies stood a charming miniature lighthouse complete with painted windows and a little light at the top. The host told me it was made entirely from stacked clay pots, the kind you can get at the Dollar Tree, and she'd built it in one afternoon. To make your own, gather 3 or 4 clay pots in graduating sizes. Turn them upside down and stack them from largest to smallest, using waterproof adhesive between each layer for stability. Once the stack is secure, paint the pots in classic lighthouse colors, white with red or navy stripes, always looks striking. Add small rectangles for windows and a door using outdoor paint so it lasts through the seasons. For the light, place a battery-operated LED candle or solar light inside the top pot. If the pot has a drainage hole, the glow will shine through, especially at dusk. Position your lighthouse where it can catch the eye, maybe near a walkway, at the corner of a flower bed, or even on a patio table as a conversation piece. This decoration works beautifully in both coastal-themed gardens and cottage-style yards. And because the pots are light, you can move the lighthouse easily without strain. You can even adapt the design for the holidays, wrapping it in tiny string lights for Christmas or adding seashells around the base in summer. The woman who inspired me said her lighthouse became a little landmark for her grandchildren. They'd run to it first thing whenever they visited sometimes, pretending it marked the way to a secret island. And that's the charm of this project. It's not just a decoration. It's a story waiting to happen. In our gardens, as in life, a small touch of imagination can guide people toward moments they'll remember. A bare fence can make a garden feel boxed in, but with a few creative touches, it can become a living wall of color. I once visited a friend whose side yard was bordered by a long wooden fence. Instead of leaving it plain, she had transformed it into a vertical garden using small hanging baskets from the Dollar Tree, each one brimming with flowers. The effect was like a quilt made of blossoms, and it made the entire space feel warmer and more welcoming. To make your own, start with lightweight metal or plastic baskets. If they come with liners, keep them, but you can also use coconut fiber or landscape fabric to hold soil while allowing for drainage. Drill a few small holes in the bottom of each basket if they don't already have them. Attach sturdy hooks or nails along the fence at even intervals, making sure they're at a height that's comfortable for watering. Hang the baskets and fill them with potting mix. Then plant blooms that will cascade over the sides. Petunias, trailing lobelia, or ivy are excellent choices. You can mix in upright plants for variety, such as geraniums or small ornamental grasses. For an extra touch, spray paint the baskets before planting to match your garden's color palette. This is especially effective if your fence is neutral in tone. The color contrast will make the plants pop even more. The beauty of this hack is its flexibility. You can swap out flowers with the season's used baskets for herbs near the kitchen, or even turn them into little succulent gardens for a low-maintenance option. Because the baskets are small and light, it's easy to rearrange them whenever you feel like giving the space a new look. My friend told me that her fence planters became a source of daily joy, not just for her, but for neighbors walking by. Sometimes the best garden features aren't the ones we build for ourselves alone, but the ones that brighten the day for anyone who happens to pass by. Keeping garden tools organized can feel like a small battle, especially when you're working in a tight space. I once visited a retired couple who had turned their modest shed into a model of efficiency. Every tool had a place, from the smallest hand trowel to the largest pruning shears. What impressed me most was their tool holder, not a fancy wall system, but a simple, over-the-door hook rack from the Dollar Tree, repurposed to keep everything neat and easy to reach. To make your own, start with a sturdy metal or plastic over-the-door rack with multiple hooks. Instead of hanging it over a door, mount it onto the wall of your shed, garage, or even an outdoor fence. Use screws or heavy-duty adhesive strips depending on the surface. Position it at a height that allows you to grab tools without bending or stretching. The hooks can hold hand tools, gloves, spray bottles, or even small buckets for seed packets and twine. For longer tools like rakes or hoes, hang them handle up so the heavier end is closer to the ground for stability. You can also label the hooks with masking tape or painted tags, so everything has a designated spot. If you prefer a touch of charm, give the rack a coat of spray paint to match your garden decor, or wrap sections in jute rope for a rustic look. You might even dedicate one hook to a favorite sun hat, so it's always ready when you head outside. The couple who inspired me said this system not only kept their tools tidy, but saved them time no more rummaging through piles or misplacing gloves. And perhaps that's the deeper value of organization. It frees your mind to focus on the joy of the task instead of the frustration of the search. In gardening, as in life, having what you need within arm's reach can make all the difference. There's a certain magic in the way sunlight dances through colored glass, scattering bits of rainbow across a garden wall. I first saw this effect in my aunt's backyard, where shimmering sun catchers swayed gently from a pergola beam. They looked like something from an artisan shop, yet she told me they were made from nothing more than old picture frames and glass beads from the Dollar Tree. The secret, she said, was patience and a willingness to see beauty in small things. To create your own, start with a lightweight picture frame, removing the glass and backing. Arrange colorful flat-backed glass beads, the kind sold in bags, for vases across the empty frame space, experimenting with patterns before committing to glue. You might choose a random scattering of colors or a more deliberate design like flowers or spirals. Once you're happy with the layout, use a strong, clear-drying adhesive to secure each bead directly to the frame's inner edge or to a piece of clear acrylic cut to size. Allow it to dry fully before handling. Attach a length of fishing line or sturdy twine to the top corners of the frame for hanging. Choose a sunny spot where the light can pass through, near a porch, in front of a kitchen window, or along a garden trellis. As the sun moves through the day, your beads will cast vibrant colors that shift with a breeze. My aunt told me that making her sun catchers became a kind of meditation. She'd sit at her table, beads spread out like jewels, and arrange them until the design felt right. And when the afternoon light streamed through them, it was a reminder that joy often comes from the simplest materials transformed with care and intention. In life, as in the garden, a bit of light and color can change everything. Clear plant labels may seem like a small detail, but they can bring both order and charm to your garden. I first spotted this idea at a community seed exchange where each herb and flower was marked with a weathered wooden stake, hand-painted in graceful script. They looked as though they'd been there for years, blending seamlessly with the soil and blooms. When I asked, the gardener laughed and said they were just paint stirrers from the Dollar Tree, given a little love and weatherproofing. To make your own, start with plain wooden paint stirrers. You can often get a pack for just $1. Lightly sand them to smooth any rough edges. If you prefer a natural look, leave the wood bare and simply seal it with a clear outdoor varnish. For more color, paint each stick with outdoor acrylic paint in soft pastels, earthy browns, or bold tones to match your garden's personality. Once the base coat is dry, use a paint pen or permanent marker to neatly write the name of each plant. You can add small illustrations, a tomato vine, a lavender sprig for extra personality. Seal the finished label with another coat of varnish to protect it from rain and sun. Push the pointed end of the stirrer into the soil near the plant, angling it slightly so it's easy to read without bending too far. These labels work for both potted plants and garden beds, and because they're inexpensive, you can make a whole set without worry. The gardener who inspired me said her labels weren't just practical, they were conversation starters. Visitors would pause to read them sometimes, asking about a plant they'd never heard of before. And maybe that's the beauty of this hack. It reminds us that names carry stories. In the same way we cherish knowing the names of people we love, naming the plants we tend is another way of honoring their place in our lives. Sometimes the best garden upgrades come from looking at indoor items with fresh eyes. I remember visiting a friend's narrow patio where she'd managed to hang nearly a dozen plants without cluttering the floor. Her secret: an old curtain rod mounted along the railing transformed into a sturdy, stylish plant hanger. She told me she found the rod at a thrift shop for just a few dollars, but you can often get them at the Dollar Tree as well. To make your own, choose a metal or wooden curtain rod long enough to span the space you want to use. It could be along a porch railing between two posts, or even mounted under a window frame. Secure it firmly using wall brackets, railing clamps, or heavy-duty hooks, making sure it can handle the weight of several small hanging pots. Once installed, use S-hooks or hanging clips to attach your planters. Lightweight pots with built-in hangers work best, but you can also use baskets or repurposed containers with added rope or chain. Position the plants so trailing varieties spill gracefully over the edges, while upright ones add height and color. The beauty of this setup is its flexibility. You can shift plants around to follow the sun, change them with the seasons, or even use the rod for holiday decorations when winter arrives. And because everything is elevated, watering and tending to the plants can be done without stooping or tripping over pots on the ground. My friend told me she loved how this simple rod transformed her patio into what she called a wall of life. It was no longer just an outdoor space. It became a living gallery she could enjoy every time she stepped outside. And perhaps that's the lesson here sometimes. The framework for beauty is already in our hands. It just needs to be hung in the right place. When I think back over these 25 garden hacks, I realize that not one of them relied on expensive materials or complicated tools. They all began with something small: a basket, a tin can, a piece of rope, and were transformed by patience, care, and a willingness to see potential where others might see nothing. In many ways, it's the same way a garden grows. A seed doesn't know it's small. It simply opens, reaches for the sun, and becomes what it was meant to be. Over the years, I've come to believe that our gardens mirror our lives. They flourish when we give them attention, they change with the seasons, and they often surprise us when we least expect it. The wire baskets that become planters, the rubber mats that look like stone, the teacups that cradle succulents. These are more than just creative projects. They are proof that beauty can be built from what's already within reach. And there's something deeply comforting in that, especially as we grow older. We may not move as quickly as we once did, but our hands can still shape beauty. Our eyes can still see possibility. Our hearts can still find joy in the transformation of something ordinary into something extraordinary. So as you look around your own garden or your porch balcony or even a sunny windowsill, ask yourself, what could I reimagine? What could I give new life to? Because the answer isn't just about creating a prettier space. It's about the satisfaction of saying, I made that, I cared for that, and it brings me joy. Until next time, dear friend, may your days be filled with light, your hands with meaningful work, and your garden with the kind of beauty that can only come from love.